Hello, Mind Bloomers. This is Mind Bloom, the safe space at the intersection of mental health advocacy and breast cancer awareness. Mind Bloom is your podcast. Subscribe to hear more on female entrepreneurship and the juggling of family life, career goals, and romantic relationships. Not an easy task, especially if your physical and mental health need a big hug right now. Hello, Mind Bloomers. This is Marina Gee, your host, and welcome to Mind Bloom, the podcast for all things mental health and breast cancer awareness. Before we dive into this week's episode, let me just say that Mind Bloom, the podcast, and the content at Mind Bloom U across all platforms is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should always contact your providers for medical counsel. Never disregard any medical treatment or delay seeking professional help because of any content authored or distributed by Mind Bloom. Hello guys, welcome again to Mind Bloom. This is episode 17, if you can imagine. This whole project, this whole idea started 17 weeks ago. That is more than 4 months, guys. It's a bit over half the time we've been in lockdown and just amidst pandemic. And it's incredible how something that I started on a whim, really, and without giving it too much thought. I was coming home from yet another breast biopsy. I was so upset and angry, and I just wanted to yell at people and start fights and ask why me, why this again. And for some reason, I just thought of turning all that anger into a podcast. And here we are, 17 weeks later, going strong. You've never really heard all that anger from me, do you? I think it's because Mind Bloom just appeases me and makes me feel good and calm. And knowing that you are on the other side of all this is just so peaceful to me. What is unbelievable to me as well at this point is that Mind Bloom, all of its 17 episodes have been listened by over 1,200 people in the world, in the entire world. Let me just read to you some of the countries where Mind Bloom has been. So definitely the United States, Portugal, my home country, hello. The UK, hello as well. I have so many good friends, podcast friends in the UK. And then, of course, Canada, Australia, Norway, the Netherlands, Thailand, I see Poland, I see Colombia, I see India, South Africa, my beautiful Ireland, Brazil, hello, Malawi, Israel, Ecuador, Morocco, I love Morocco, so beautiful, Peru, United Arab Emirates, Argentina, Sweden, and Singapore. And I left out a few. Guys, this is unbelievable. I thank you so much. And I hope you stay on and you keep coming back. I will be here. In the spirit of self-indulgence, because this is my podcast and I feel good about it and about how it's growing, how fast it's growing, how much people like it, and how many responses and comments and reviews I get from people all over the world. So, in that awesome spirit, and no, don't shame me out of it. No, I want to stay in the self indulgence spirit right now. I am going to read you a beautiful review I got from someone in the UK. It's actually my good friend Ray from Twitter and from the podcast Not Before Coffee. You can find Ray and Not Before Coffee on Twitter at Need 3 mugs. She is amazing. I listen to her podcast weekly. Her voice is tremendously soothing and calming. She talks about personal stuff in her life and most often about books she read and films she watched, TV shows she likes. She's all about female empowerment. I'm a big fan of Ray, so thank you, my dear. So here it goes. This is a show that makes you think, covering topics that are personal and sensitive in a way that makes you wish you had Marina's phone number, just so she can tell you everything will be fine. It is, guys. It is going to be fine. If you are in need of perspective, then this is definitely the podcast to listen to, especially when everyone is in need of a bit of clarity. Mental health is a topic close to my heart, and this show is like going to expensive therapy without having to A. leave the house, or B. be put on a 6-month waiting list. Yes, NHS. Thank you so much, Ray. This is unbelievable. I thank you so much. You touch on such important topics. The fact that you think Mind Bloom puts things into perspective is so, so great and so rewarding, because that's exactly what I try to do. I try to put things into perspective. Like, this is bad, okay, but it could be worse, and we're in this together. We're fighting together for a good cause. We're fighting the good fight against cancer, against taboos, against stigma. So, yeah. And then comparing Mind Bloom to expensive therapy. I really, really like this idea. I think I'm going to start charging, actually, now that you mention it. And then my phone number. Yes, you don't, all of you have my phone number. Some of you do, but you know where to reach me at this point. You can look me up on Twitter at MindBloomU. You can look me up on Instagram at MindBloomU, and Facebook and Pinterest at MindBloomU. My inbox is open on all those 4 places. You can leave me a quick message. I am so, so happy to interact with you. You can also send me an email to info@mindbloomu.com and check out my website, mindbloomu.com. Basically, everything is MindBloomU. Check YouTube. I am on there too. There's no dedicated URL yet, but just look up Mind Bloom and you will find us there. Speaking about reaching out and staying in touch with the people who are going through similar experiences to ours, and to just obey this impulse to be a part of their support system. I followed someone on Instagram this weekend, someone I felt would fit in instantly with the Mind Bloom community, and they followed me back, and I sent them a message and thanked them for following Mind Bloom. And I said, because I had been reading a few of their posts, I thanked them. I said, they're written beautifully, and they were. And this person was so just thankful. And they told me they were going to have breast surgery this Tuesday. So the day the episode airs, which is tomorrow for me, now that I'm recording, she's having a double mastectomy as part of their line of treatment for breast cancer. So as you listen to this, please think of Amy, send her all the love and best wishes and a speedy recovery. I said I would touch base towards the end of the week, and I hope to do so. And I hope it all goes so well and smoothly and as easy and painless as a major invasive surgery such as this one can be. This month of October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so it's a very special month for Mind Bloom and for the Mind Bloom community on social media. We will have not only one but 2 episodes and 2 interviews a week. So for the next 4 weeks, including this week, we're having 4 episodes, so 8 episodes in the month of October. It's a little bit crazy. It's a little bit maybe too much work, but I'm feeling good about it. I've already edited the 2 episodes of this week. I've created social media content in bulk a little bit. I don't like to create content for the entire month. I can't really predict things that far ahead, but I will do maybe all the posts of 1 week, and that makes me feel better and more in control of things, because posting, especially on Instagram, you know how it is. It could be very time consuming. So having those posts ready to go for the rest of this week is very comforting, really, for me. So even though it feels like extra, and it is extra work, I feel I am prepared, and I am preparing myself and anticipating that I will be tired at some points. So I am not only cutting some slack, so if a post is not as long in its caption, or if it's not as pretty, witty, bleaty as I want it to be on Canva, it's going to be okay. And I know you guys won't blame me for any of that. So, but I'm very excited to tell you more about these 8 interviews. So 2 this week and then another 6 over the next 3 weeks. We're going to kick off October Breast Cancer Awareness Month with someone who, like me, was at some point diagnosed with LCIS, and they had a double mastectomy as a preventative measure for not developing breast cancer in the future, since our odds of making a breast cancer after having LCIS are very, very high. If you have questions about LCIS, and trust me, I do not blame you, because I have so many questions, and it's a conundrum, really, because it's not breast cancer, but it can be treated as if it were breast cancer, given that the high risk is, well, it's high, it's through the roof. LCIS means lobular carcinoma in situ, and it is an abnormal cell growth in the breast tissue, which is defined in the medical community by a marker for high risk of breast cancer. It is treated by removal, so surgical removal. You have a lumpectomy to remove the tumor, the cells that are growing abnormally, and they then biopsy that piece of breast tissue, and they want to make sure the margins are clear for DCIS or other types of breast cancer, invasive or not. Once the surgery is over, you're home and you've recovered, then your breast surgeon wants to talk to you about precautions, prevention, what you can do, given that you're now a Previvor. You're part of this group of people who needs to make decisions if they want to not have breast cancer in the future, I guess. So part of the treatment, of the prophylactic treatment, includes taking hormonal therapy. In my case, they recommend tamoxifen for 5 years. I have not yet decided what I'll do, because tamoxifen comes with a few side effects. Some of them include uterine cancer, So hello. And medically induced menopause, which will come with all the symptoms associated with perimenopause. So hot flashes, vaginal dryness, I don't know, possibly depression, and just an increase in your anxiety levels if you're already prone for that. So, I mean, it's not spectacular news. Tamoxifen diminishes your possibility of making breast cancer by 50%. Doctors claim it's a good odds, it's a good number, but speaking with my LCIS peers, a 50% decrease in the risk of making breast cancer is not high enough, we would say, if you're risking getting or developing uterine cancer and all the other things I just mentioned. So, complicated. The other prophylactic treatment many women choose is a preventative double mastectomy. So you eradicate the root of the problem and you no longer have a problem. Of course, there's never ever 0% chance that you'll develop breast cancer, but you are probably going to lower your rate of incidence to 2 or 5%. So it's huge. It's a double mastectomy is the way to go if you want to forever and ever stop the 6 months follow-ups and stop the anxiety and the scanxiety and the development, really, of breast cancer. Now, the other course of treatment or of prevention is doing nothing, which is what I'm doing right now. Doing nothing means having 6 months follow-ups. So I'm coming up on my second follow-up since surgery in December. It's going to be in November, and I get a little jittery just thinking about it. So November, here I come again, and every 6 months from then on, possibly for the rest of my life. So you see what I am doing here. I'm talking about LCIS from my perspective, my very personal and individual perspective, because each woman, each person, each breast tissue really is different, and your medical team will come up with different approaches, but the gold standard for LCIS is that you can do one of three things: do nothing and have follow-ups, take your tamoxifen for 5 years. I think you still do the follow-ups, and you cross your fingers that after 5 years it's going to be okay, and you can do the preventative double mastectomy. I guess the silver lining of this whole mess is that it's not breast cancer, so yay. But if you've been diagnosed in the past with LCIS, you're put in the Previvor category, if there is any such thing. It's similar to having had your Bragg gene mutation testing done, and you tested positive for that gene mutation, and therefore you know that your odds of developing breast cancer are as well through the roof, and you want to take control as much as it's possible. You want to take control of your life and your body and what's going to happen to it throughout the course of your life. And LCIS is going to be the topic of today's interview. So my guest this week, this Tuesday, is Donna Bragg. She is a newscast anchor with more than 20 years of experience, and she is also a medical reporter and researcher, so she knew very well what her odds were when she got the phone call from the doctor saying that cells with LCIS had been found in her breast tissue. This was about 2 years ago, and you're going to hear more about her experience in just a few minutes. But first, let me tell you then, Thursday there'll be another episode, this time around with a breast surgeon. So she will be answering all my questions, if that's possible, about, again, LCIS. We're just going to call it the LCIS week. And it's going to be very, very enlightening. And she will also be busting some myths that occur and revolve around breast cancer. Things like deodorant, is it good or bad for you? Mammograms, biopsies, are they good or bad? Are they doing worse than good? So we'll find out all about that. And then come next week, I'll have 2 guests a week, so 2 episodes. Mark your calendars, Tuesdays and Thursdays for all the month of October. We're going to be talking with people that I respect immensely, people of all ages, people from all around the world, from Australia to Canada. And each and every one of these people have experienced breast cancer, or still are experiencing, because it doesn't really go away, are still experiencing breast cancer and living with it or in remission. So they know very well what they are talking about. It's not from a medical perspective. For that, we will have our interview this Thursday, but it's from a personal and an intimate perspective. Here on Mind Bloom, we don't want to spread fear. We don't want to spread panic or dread or confusion. We try to call things by their names, and that's exactly what we are going to be doing in these interviews. We're going to be calling anxiety, anxiety, and we're not going to be scared of invoking depression. And we will talk about chemotherapy. We will talk about double mastectomy and the recovery process and the breast drains and the multiple types of breast mount reconstruction, or the flat closure reconstruction as well. That is, if you choose not to reconstruct the breast mounts, but you still choose to reconstruct your chest and make it flat. We're going to call metastatic metastatic. It's the cancer, the breast cancer in this case, that spreads to your liver, to your brain, to your lungs, to your bones. And we're going to be talking about one of the most aggressive types of cancer, triple negative estrogen receptor. That one's a little sneaky bastard, as is lobular invasive cancer. Sneaky, you don't see it. It could be 12 centimeters inside your chest, and you don't feel it. Now, how about that? And most of all, I'm going to be reiterating throughout the importance of early detection, the importance of self-assessing and self-touching, and knowing your body, knowing the symptoms, knowing when you see changes in the chest area. It does not have only to be the breast itself. It could be something in your armpits. It could be something up your chest wall, up to your neck, where the lymph nodes are located. Be aware, be on the lookout. Don't dismiss any signs, because your body and your mind are going to give you signs. Don't let the doctors dismiss you as well, because they will if you are 27 years old and you don't have a family history of breast cancer. We're going to be talking about cases like that this month, and they're more common than you would imagine. So I am very, very, very excited. I'm also very honored to be a part of the Breasties community, to be seen as a peer, to be perceived as a supporter, an ally, an empathizer, and to be understood and recognized as someone who wants to spread awareness, spread information, spread knowledge, and break up the taboos and the stigma and the shame and the guilt. Did I eat something I shouldn't have and therefore I have cancer? Did I wear underwire bras and now I have breast cancer? Did I use deodorant and now I have breast cancer? No, my friend, no, 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 no. There is no shame. There is no guilt. There is no assigning blame here on Mind Bloom. There's no judgment. It's a judgment-free zone, and it's a safe space for you to learn, to get in touch with what you're feeling and how you're processing what is going on in your life. And it doesn't have to be breast cancer, of course. And for you to know you're not alone, that we're all out there holding hands, and the circle cannot be too big. There's room for one more and one more and one more, and you're always welcome. So if you have a question, if you have doubts, if you want to look for a second opinion and you're not sure you should, if you're being dismissed by a doctor because you're in your early 30s and you cannot have breast cancer, they say, or if you feel you're being dismissed by a family member because you feel anxiety just exploding out of your chest and it's just being taken lightly by others, then you've come to the right place. We're here for you, as I know that you're here for me too. Guys, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Turns out it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. It will also distribute your podcast for you so that everyone can listen to it on Spotify and Apple Podcast and many, many more. And guess what? You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So go download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Hello, Donna. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. How are you?
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure. I am so honored to have you on Mind Bloom. You are a fellow LCIS. We have different stories, I'm sure, because no LCIS is the same and no other history with surrounding breast cancer is the same. So I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about. Firstly, Donna, yes. What makes your mind bloom?
Oh my goodness, my children probably. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Mm-hmm. They are such an inspiration to me, and certainly the thing that makes me the proudest and the happiest and the most fearful in life. So yeah, excuse me. I really just work every day to be a better person, and curiosity makes my mind bloom too. So I would say just being a curious person in this world, traveling through life, and certainly having two people like them to love.
Yeah, for sure. I accompany your Instagram feed on a daily basis. You know, we always end up seeing each other on there. And I mean, they are gorgeous. They're perfect. They're adorable for sure.
Thank
I wish
you.
them all the best, and to you too. They have a great mom.
I appreciate that. We are very close, and I certainly couldn't make it through this world without them.
I can imagine, yes.
Yeah.
So Donna, we met virtually on Facebook, on a Facebook group called LCIS. I believe that's the name. And I'm going to leave it to you to explain or define or just break down the acronym for LCIS. But regardless, we met there, and we met specifically when you posted that you had started a blog where you wanted to express and give a testimony in terms of this condition, I guess. Yeah. I don't even know exactly how to define it. So do you want to start with LCIS?
Sure.
And that?
LCIS stands for lobular carcinoma in situ. And it is such a scary diagnosis when your doctor calls and says, let's have a chat, you have something. Mm-hmm. And certainly lots of people who hear the word carcinoma think immediately cancer. Mm-hmm. And what you learn pretty quickly when you start trying to get more information about LCIS is that, in fact, you do not have invasive cancer. Mm-hmm. It is a neoplasia It is an area of abnormal cells inside the lobules of your breast. And I should say, you don't feel it. You don't see it on a mammogram. You don't know it's there. Most every woman, I think almost every case, has been diagnosed via biopsy. So I happen to have a biopsy of tissue, and it came back with a diagnosis of LCIS. And I went searching for information. And as it turns out, even a lot of doctors aren't very aware of what LCIS is, because it's really quite rare. It is a risk factor for developing invasive breast cancer. All of the paperwork says within 10 to 12 years of your initial diagnosis. So you have some time to make a decision after you find out what it is. It's just that it's hard to get very good information.
Yeah.
Your doctors, unless they're very specified, don't know what it is. They'll call it cancer, but you really don't have cancer. And so, like you, perhaps, I went online searching for resources, and I did find a Facebook group, an LCIS support group, which I was so happy to run across. And there are so many other women like you and me who kind of struggle with, what is this? How concerned do I need to be about it? What kind of treatment is the best to take for it, or what options to choose for it? And I just felt like I wanted to change the name of LCIS.
That's right.
Because when you hear lobular carcinoma, it hardly sounds like it's not cancer. It is not cancer. One of the breast surgeons specialists that I went to along my journey told me they really need to change the name to lobular neoplasia, which I'm in full support of. I think it would cause us a lot less angst.
Exactly. It is the angst that kills us ultimately. You're left with a diagnosis of this acronym, and you come home and you start reading, and you definitely don't have a clear vision. My breast surgeon, after in the post-op appointment, dismisses it and calls it, it's not cancer. You're okay. It's not cancer. And the margins were fine. Everything was okay. So go home and I'll see you in 6 months. Regardless, you have to see an oncologist, and you probably need to take tamoxifen. And I just want to add that a double mastectomy is your choice.
Right, yes.
So I come home. Okay, it's not breast cancer, but what do I make of all of this, right?
Right. And the treatment options include everything from doing nothing to removing your breasts. Quite a span.
Quite a span. So not being cancer does not really help. I understand that calling it something that is so removing the carcinoma name from the acronym makes complete sense. But you do need more explanation regardless. Just calling it hyperplasia, neoplasia, that's fine. But the woman needs to leave the doctor's office with some answers. My OBGYN, and like you were saying, calls it cancer. My breast surgeon does not call it cancer. It's like, make up your minds, ladies.
Yes. My plastic surgeon to this day, and I love him. I ended up in my journey, I had a preventive mastectomy, and he still refers to my cancer. And I don't try to correct him anymore. It's really sort of pointless at this point. I don't have it anymore. I removed it from my life. But that was just my decision. There's so many other decisions that you can make along that spectrum.
And I want to talk more about that, so hold your thought. I do want to step back a little bit and talk about what you were saying about it not being visible, and I completely agree, and I experienced it in firsthand. It's not visible in mammograms. Even lobular invasive cancer is very, very hard and tricky to find, but ours definitely is not seen in mammograms, very difficultly in ultrasounds, and mine, and you'll tell me more, mine was found in an MRI, just a fluke. My doctor decided it was time to have an MRI. I had done a couple before because I've always had very complicated breast tissue. So last year she thought it was time to do it again. And they found this 7mm mass, and then the biopsy, and then the lumpectomy, etc., etc. So how did this go for you?
Well, it started, I'm going to say it was 2 years ago. I went in for plastic surgery to have a breast lift and reduction, and a vain thing to do, I suppose. It's something that I needed to do and wanted to do for my life, having no indication that I may come out of it with a diagnosis. I have no family history of breast cancer. And so after the surgery, I received notice from my physician that he wanted to talk to me. They take tissue. When they remove tissue, they just, as a normal course of action, send it for lab results or lab testing. And so I got the report back. There was this focus of LCIS, and that started my journey. I naturally, you immediately go to a specialist and you talk to them, and then you want to research your options. And like you said, there's not that much information out there, and not a lot of your local physicians will know about it. You really need to seek out professionals. Not a lot of people have seen it or treated it. LCIS is a scary sounding thing, and it presents itself differently in you and in me. What was interesting for me is that because it was found in removed tissue, I had no idea if there were still any left in me.
That's right.
So, like you said, we all, I guess, have a unique path that we travel. Ultimately, I think from the beginning, I had this thought in my mind that whatever that was in there, I didn't want it to stay in there. So I always thought I would treat it very aggressively. Cancer is something that I have seen up close and personal with family members and friends. And it's just a very frightening thought to me, much more frightening than LCIS. So I wanted to lower my risks as dramatically as I could.
So it's interesting you never had the biopsy and all of that. It was because the tissue was removed in the first place.
Yes.
And then you had surgery again, a double mastectomy.
I did. I took about a year.
Okay.
I took about a year's worth of time to, like you, every 6 months I would go, I would have an exam, have an MRI, a mammography, a breast exam. And I did try one of the medications that lowers your body's reaction to estrogen.
Right.
I didn't like it at all.
Tamoxifen?
The medication, I didn't try tamoxifen. I actually tried the anastrozole. And it's actually less strong than the tamoxifen. And I didn't like it at all. So I was able to say, I don't think I want to do 5 years of a medication that makes me uncomfortable for only a 50% reduction in your increased risk.
Exactly.
It doesn't completely reduce your risk. It just reduces it about half.
Yeah.
And so after lots of consultation with physicians, with my family, I just decided to go the preventive mastectomy route.
Yeah.
And the last time I saw my breast surgeon, he told me my risk for developing cancer now would be between 1% and 5%.
That's great.
I can deal with those odds.
Right. That's a great trade-off.
It's amazing how they can try to pinpoint these numbers for you, isn't it?
Isn't it?
So some oncologists will say that anything above 20% is quite an increased risk.
Exactly. So I have around 20, I can't find it now, the document, around 20-something percent at 44, my age now, versus I think 2% of the women, the average woman, and 68% average in my lifetime.
Yes.
It's not good odds. No, it's not good at all.
Well, odds are odds, and sometimes they don't come to fruition, but for some reason, it was important to me. Battling those odds seemed like I didn't want those odds. So I wanted to change them. And I guess that's just, my approach. It certainly it's not everyone's approach, for sure.
You said you spent 1 year deciding and preparing. What do you think about that year now, looking back?
I remember having so much angst and worry and concern. every time I would go for the 6 months,
Right.
to get a checkup or go to an appointment, it just made me quite nervous. I would think about my family a lot. I don't want cancer for myself, but I certainly don't want it for my children or for my parents. I would hate for them to have to undergo something like that. I guess that year's worth of time, it was important to me because I wanted to be very well armed with information, but I really kind of think I knew from the beginning where I was headed. I tried some of the other things and it just didn't work for me. So I took my time and I met with several physicians, several plastic surgeons, oncologists.
So you sought more than a second opinion.
Yes. I am a believer that you have to take charge of your own health. And having been a medical reporter for so long in my life, I'm not afraid to ask questions and I'm not afraid to go for multiple appointments. And I really just, I wanted to make a sound decision based on facts, but also you can't avoid the whole emotional piece of it. I think what is a blessing now for me is that I just don't worry about it anymore. I really don't.
How was your post-op? Emotionally and physically, if you can, if it's not too difficult.
Yes, I can. For me, the worst part of the entire journey was just making that definitive decision to do it. I cried so many times before that. I really had a lot of fear and a lot of questions, and the more that you learn about mastectomy, it increases your fear. But I remember one distinct moment in time that I just said, you know what, this is my decision, and I'm not going to second guess it. I'm not going to ask for another opinion or talk to another person, because for me, in my mind, this is it. I'm decided. And so once I did that and I reached that place and I told myself, I'm not second guessing this anymore, I never cried again. I think it was just my process. I had to make the decision. And once I did, everything was a little easier because then it was just taking care of business.
You didn't look back. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, I can totally see that. So after surgery, you come home and, like you said, you take care of business. You take care of your wounds and your scars and
the surgery itself obviously is painful, but, they give you medications to help control your pain. The difficulty is really the drains are a hassle. You have to wait a while before you can shower and all of that. So, there are complications, but it's hard for me to really complain because I feel so blessed in a way. I'm not blessed that I had to do this or felt that I had to do this, but I feel so lucky that I got the choice, because so many women have to undergo surgeries like this under the gun when they're facing horrific odds or they're facing terrifying diagnoses. And I got to choose. So I feel blessed, which might be a strange way to look at it, but I do.
Not at all. I say that, every day.
If you ask me if I regret anything, I do not.
Yes, I was not going to ask you that,
but
I'm so glad, because I can see you don't, and I can see you're a source of strength and energy and power, and that's great.
I try to be. It's hard though. This process, it will take a lot out of you, but we women are so tough. I am. The older I get, the more impressed I am with women. We are tough creatures. We are extraordinary beings. And I think that most of us do almost everything that we do for others, or at least a lot of us do.
We're trained.
And I love that about women. I think women are incredible.
They are. And we realize we're stronger than we thought we were. Every day.
Always.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, because life is going to throw obstacles at you. That's just what life is. And you can either dig under them or climb over them or kick those suckers right out of your way. And sometimes you just have to muck through it. But, that's life, and we're tough.
These are life lessons for sure. Yeah. I want to go back a little bit to LCIS and our support group on Facebook. I want to throw a number out there. I would say that from the posts and the conversations we have there, I want to say 80-90% of the women there have had or are about within the month to have mastectomies. Wouldn't you agree? Or the conversation revolves much around that?
I do see that a lot.
What does that make you think of this LCIS?
A couple of things. I think that maybe it's because women who are diagnosed, or maybe the women who join that group are a little further out from their diagnosis. Maybe they're starting to think about being aggressive with treatment, and maybe they're searching for a sisterhood and a support group, because let's face it, most of us don't have friends who've had it or don't have relatives who've had it. So I guess maybe that could be one reason why so many women in the group are talking about mastectomy. And another reason could also be that maybe just more women are choosing that as an option from the get-go. And I don't know why, but it could be too that we, like me, maybe lots of women have experienced cancer in their lives and they've seen it and they want to do anything that they can do to prevent it from happening to them and to their families.
Yeah, exactly.
It is somewhat of a radical decision, some would say. And it's not an easy decision. And I think you almost really can't give advice to anyone because it needs to be your own personal decision.
From what I was told from surgeons, LCIS about until 10 years ago was by default treated as cancer, and the double mastectomy would be the gold standard for treatment. And this method has changed over the last 10 years towards going away from the double mastectomy. But it's interesting how the women themselves, the patients, the people going through this, are choosing the gold standard again, or going back to that. I think for peace of mind and for running away from the scanxiety and from cancer.
I love the term you just used, scanxiety.
Isn't it amazing? It's not mine. It's amazing. It's not mine. Instagram will teach you.
Perfectly fitting term, though. That Isn't is a perfect word. I'm going to borrow that if you don't mind.
I do. Yes, it's not mine.
I certainly had scanxiety.
Of course. And for that peace of mind, I mean, maybe the body itself or your self-image can take a brunt, and that's the price to pay.
I would say a lot of women, certainly me included, another Facebook group that I joined was mastectomy face groups and preventive mastectomy Facebook groups, support groups. And a lot of times what you'll find in these online support groups, like the preventive mastectomy and the mastectomy support groups, is a lot of people will post things that when they're not happy with their result. So it can sometimes appear like, oh my gosh, everyone is having a negative, bad result. So every once in a while, someone will inevitably post, could you tell me your positive stories on these groups? And you'll find that hundreds of women will respond in, yes, everything was great. Everything was perfect. Everything's wonderful. So, take online support posts with a grain of salt too. I have scars, but I'm proud of them. I really am. And they don't look that bad. It's something that I think is a courageous thing to do. At least I felt in my mind, it was a courageous decision for myself and for my family. And I really don't find the scarring to be that bad. It's amazing what surgeons can do these days. They do wonderful work. And how blessed we are, to have been women with these choices. I had a very good friend she was a couple of decades my senior. I met her many years ago. And she told me every woman in her family had breast cancer or had been diagnosed or died from breast cancer. And when she was young, she went in search of a plastic surgeon who would remove her breasts. And no one at that time would do surgery on healthy breast tissue. And sure enough, 10 years down the road, she was diagnosed as well with invasive breast cancer. And she survived. She went into remission twice, but sadly, breast cancer did take her life. And I remember, she was just so beautiful. And she would say things to me like, listen, the only difference between you and me is that I have a really good idea of what's probably going to kill me. She was right. But I do remember her saying to me, I wish I had the choices that women do now. She did not have the benefit of having genetic testing. And back then, no surgeons would remove healthy breast tissue. And she is no longer with us. And I hear her voice in my head. When I was struggling with my decision, I could just hear her saying, I wish I had the options women do now. And sometimes people come into your life for a reason, and maybe I just needed to hear that. I hope she knows somewhere up there that I heard her.
The right decision, yeah.
Yeah, she's a lovely woman.
I was going to say that you were blessed as well with having met this woman. Let me take you to your blog, sharingwithmybreasties.com. It's wonderful and beautiful and full of optimism, and your amazing pictures. And I mean, you look gorgeous there. And why wouldn't you? And tell us more.
Well, it's funny. I have always enjoyed writing. I was a reporter for decades of my life. And something in me just thought, I need to share more information about LCIS. There's just not enough out there. Mm-hmm. This is such a unique and rare sort of diagnosis. And I just sort of had this idea that I should share it. But it's also very scary for me. It's uncomfortable every time I sit down to write another, post. It gets way too long, and then I fret over how much do I share and how much do I not share. And, it's funny. I feel like most of my life I've been a pretty open book, but when you start to write about very intimate things like your breasts and your diagnosis and your family, it's a little scary, to be honest. And sharing this with you is probably a very public thing for me to do. And I recently did an interview with a magazine in Fort Smith, Arkansas, called Due South Magazine. And they wrote an article that actually came out today. Mm-hmm. And so I guess I am forcing myself to share more and more. I will eventually have to put this on my Facebook page and share with everyone your story and your podcast, because
if you want
what I have found in my journey is that there are so many incredible women out there in the world that are really willing to help and share and give you details. And it's such a great resource to reach out, because a lot of women are a little afraid to do so. But it's really easy. You don't even have to drive to a support group meeting. You just log in and you'll find all these women who've been through what you're going through. And that's one thing, just to hear their stories. But what's incredible is when you start messaging them and you become friends, and I had people send me drain pouches before my surgery and pillows. And, these are people I've never met in person, but who I really have sort of this kinship with now, that I would like to do my part to share. And if it can help just one person, that's great. And you know what? If it only helps me, that's great too. Mm. It's not that I'm doing it for any kind of gain. It might just be that maybe one person has my similar situation and I could help her, and I would love to.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly why I started Mind Bloom as well.
That's wonderful. I love your podcast.
Thank you. It's your podcast too.
It's everybody's, isn't it?
It's everybody's.
When you put it out there, it's sort of like birthing a baby of sorts, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to put it out there. And I try as much as possible to stay candid and be candid about what the things I go through, and sometimes not related to breast cancer necessarily, just things of life and growth. But boy, is it hard.
It is. And I didn't think that I would be such a fearful person about sharing, but it is. It's a little, anytime you put a piece of you out into the world, there's a little fear that someone will reject it. But in truth, I think the more you do, the more people react positively to you. And so don't stop sharing your story, and don't stop. I mean, it's a gift to be able to help others, and something that I think of other friends who have blogs for various reasons, and I admire them more so now. Yeah.
It's hard, yes.
Courageous.
And it was exactly with that idea in mind as well, the idea of helping. If I had that exact sentence in my head, if it's only one person that I can help, my job will have been done. Yeah. And I remember I felt that had been accomplished, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word. When I started receiving direct messages on Instagram from people who had gone through biopsies and were in pain or soreness, didn't know exactly what was going on with their body. They were scared of the results of that biopsy. And interestingly enough, no one had told them that there would be bruising and there would be soreness. And so
I remember my very first mammogram when I turned 40.
Right.
After I got the results of the mammogram, they called me back and wanted to do a stereotactic breast biopsy for a suspicious area. And it scared me to death.
Yeah.
I literally, the next day, checked my will to make sure that everything was up to date because I was so afraid. And it turns out women who have fibrous breast tissue, this is a common occurrence. It turned out to be nothing. I did have the breast biopsy, but women who have, I guess fibrous breasts are a good thing in some ways because they're nice and firm breasts, but they're hard to look at in a mammogram.
Very much.
And, these things happen a lot with women, and it is scary. I don't know how you take away the fear, though. Just knowing that other women like us are out there who've been through a lot of these hassles and a lot of these frights and fears are willing to help. I think that may be a boost.
That helps, yeah. Having someone to hold our hands, I guess. And
especially this breast cancer community. You and I guess, are what they call previvors.
Exactly.
Along this whole breast cancer spectrum, we are people who were at an increased risk. But there are thrivers and there are survivors. And, every single one of them along the entire spectrum that I've ever really talked with has been supportive of your situation and where you're going and the decisions that you're making. Like I said earlier, sometimes I feel almost guilty, that I got a warning signal.
No.
A lot of women don't. But the women that I've talked with, they don't begrudge you your warning signal. They're so loving and supportive and understanding. And this is a fantastic group of women out here in the world who are trying to make a difference and help other women. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yes. In this journey of Mind Bloom, I've had women with metastatic breast cancer support me imagine.
Yes. Isn't that wonderful?
Isn't it? Yes. And eye-opening, and just so shows you how beautiful the world is, really, and how many amazing people are out there. It's so focused on
unbelievable, isn't it, how many of us are affected by breast cancer?
Donna, would you have any tips for the people at home who, like us, had this diagnosis of LCIS, or just have huge scanxiety? Now I can use the word. And I was one of those. I still am, but I was one of those suffering tremendously with just the word mammogram and ultrasound. That would just make me flip out. So do you have any advice for people going through these things on the spectrum of breast cancer?
I don't know that I'm a great person to give advice. I will just say, do your research, be an advocate for your own health, recognize that you don't have to do the first thing that someone tells you to do. I think there are women who are afraid to ask too many questions, and maybe they're afraid to go seek a second opinion or a third opinion. But this is your body and your health, and you only get one.
Yeah.
So be an advocate for yourself and stand up for yourself and research, ask questions, seek out support. As I was going through that year-long decision time period about whether I would have a mastectomy, I sought out a lot of support from my family, from my friends. I just wasn't sure if I was making the right decision. I struggled. And if it weren't for, women like yourself and others who offer up help and support, I just don't think I would have been able to manage the stress and the anxiety. So my advice would just be to find out, get every question answered, keep a list, and don't be afraid to ask the questions. And only when you're comfortable, make the decisions that you need to make. And whatever decisions they are, I think I support women who make any decision, whether it be to do nothing or whether it be to do the most aggressive treatment there is. You really have to just support each other and understand that each woman is doing the thing that is best for her and her family. And there's support out there. Know that there is support out there. A lot of women on the blogs, for example, I feel so bad because they'll write in their stories and they have no one. Some of the women don't have family or friends, or they're going through a divorce, or their husband is leaving them because they've had cancer treatment. It's heartbreaking. And just don't allow yourself to be so alone, because there are lots of women out here in this blogosphere world and this podcast world and this social world that will help you and offer you advice and, even send you a drain holder. It's just a beautiful thing.
Exactly. Thank you, Donna, so much. I appreciate you so much. I'm so blessed to have met you on the Facebook group, a support group. Who'd have thought?
I know. Right? Now it's so nice to see your face on my Zoom camera here. You're so beautiful and glowing. And I appreciate what you're doing with your Mind Bloom.
Thank you. And that was our episode for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you were able to take away some useful tips and tools to use in your own life. Don't forget to subscribe to Mind Bloom the podcast anywhere you stream your podcasts, and please leave a message on the Anchor FM voicemail if you have any questions or comments for me. Also, please leave a review on the Apple Podcasts app. That would help the podcast reach more people. That would be great. Follow Mind Bloom on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at MindBloomU, and check out my website, mindbloomu.com. Don't forget, a new episode every Tuesday. I look forward to spending time with you again next week. Be well and stay blessed. Bye-bye.